Welcome everyone, my name is Limbic and this is Starclass, the StarCraft 2 show aimed at complete beginners. Today we are going to be talking about the most important thing if you are looking to get better at StarCraft 2. All of the previous episodes have been more about the very basics. We talked about what supply is, what a pylon is, what does 4-gate mean. Now we're done with the very basics, we're on to actual gameplay. And this is the single-handedly most important thing you need to know if you want to become better at StarCraft 2. And so many people do not know this, and I think that it really causes, I think that a lot of balance whining and, excuses and not knowing why you aren't able to win anymore stems from not knowing this. We're going to be talking about macro versus micro. If you don't know what those are, you probably should be watching my previous video, but I'll go ahead and explain them. Macro is the building of stuff. Stuff being workers, production facilities, units, researches, upgrades, pretty much stuff you build. Micro is the control of your units, and that includes, moving them back, casting spells, etc. We're going to be talking about which one of these is by far more important, and the answer may surprise you a little. The answer is macro is by far more important. And what I think is kind of the problem is that new players, when they're getting into the game, they might have watched some pro games and they see, even the casters will say like, oh, that Protoss their force fields are perfect, wow, and then the new player might be thinking, okay, I want to play Protoss, so I guess that means that I should really focus on making sure my force fields are perfect. I should have really good storms. I should make sure that my blink micro is insane, and everything else kind of comes second to that, right? Well, the answer is no. In the background right now, you should be seeing some games where I'm playing kind of ridiculous strategies that are intentionally ridiculous, where I'm just massing up only one unit. It's basically the only unit I build for the game. It's not even a good unit against the race I'm playing against. I'm not even playing my main race, and I'm managing to win. And these players are not even that much worse for me. Some of them are even in the same league as me. And why am I doing this? It's kind of to prove a point. If your macro is way better than your opponent's, you can win even with ridiculous things. It doesn't even matter necessarily what you are building, because if you build a lot of it, you will be able to crush any foes that stand in your way if their macro is way worse than yours. So how can you improve your macro? You should really be focusing on making sure that you're always building workers, that your production facilities are always active, and that you're not getting supply blocked. Those are the three most important things. It's kind of awkward for Zerg because Zerg has to choose between building workers and units, which is why it's always kind of recommended that if you're a new player, you don't start out as Zerg. But if you're Terran or Protoss, this is why Terran is kind of the recommended race for new players to start out with, because your command centers should always be building SCVs. Your barracks should always be producing units. Whereas, with Protoss, okay, sometimes your gateway should not be warping in. But if you have a robotics facility, that thing should always be doing something. If your Nexus should always be producing probes. So, if you really work on your macro, I guarantee you will start to see improvements in your play. I'm not saying play super greedy. I'm not saying like take 3 bases before you build your first barracks. That would be stupid, to be honest. Just play normal, safe builds, because you don't want to die to any cheese. If you start out in the lower leagues, cheese is very common, so you have to keep that in mind. But don't just start, don't start cheesing yourself every game. Don't play super aggressive. I think that what happens is a lot of players, when they start out, they start playing super aggressively and they start winning because aggression really works against new players, and then they hit a point where their opponents know how to defend, and then they start getting crushed because they realize that they didn't actually know the most important core principles, which is macro, or they just don't have very good macro. So then they start thinking, oh wow, I can't ever beat Protoss anymore, because even though I do all these sick drops all over the place and I have this sick, unit control, they still get crushed, and then my opponent just has this huge death ball army and wins. Oh my god, Protoss is so overpowered. But what's actually happening is that your macro probably sucks. You're probably just not building units all the time, which you really should be. So I'm cutting this, not cutting, but I'm keeping this Starclass episode really short because it's basically just a simple statement. Macro is so vastly more important than micro. It seriously does not matter even what you build. You don't really have to know that much about the meta. You don't have to have a perfect build that you can execute like the pros every time in order to start climbing through the leagues. You just have to have good macro. Good macro can carry you to at least, I'd say, platinum alone. And then you can start working on your micro and, knowing the meta and getting your builds down perfectly. But before that, just work on macro. Those 3 things I said. Always building workers, always building units, and making sure that you're not getting supply blocked. Alright, keeping this short because I really just want to drill that into your head. Macro, macro, macro. Thank you very much for watching. My name has been Limbic, and I will see you all next time.